To go back to Abraham Lincoln, nobody put it better than the only president in the U.S. who's ever held a patent himself. And what he said, and it's inscribed on the top of the Commerce Building here in D.C., is that the patent system adds the fuel of interest to the fire of genius.
You see, the one thing that is the resource that every country has is the human mind. And we're all, as human beings, equally inventive and creative. What makes the difference is institutions.
Since 1980, American universities alone have generated over $1.3 trillion in economic growth, 4.2 million jobs, and 11,000 startups. So the vision of the ecosystem is what is so unique in American medical innovation.
When we talk about the ecosystem, we're talking about technology transfer. We're talking about governments and universities and startups and businesses large and small sharing pieces of their proprietary know-how so that they can collaborate.
Since 1997, the U.S. has produced more new medicines than any other country or region in the world. We're the largest funder of biomedical research and development in recent decades, as much as 80% of the global R&D we're doing. Since 2000, we've accounted for almost half of the world's new drugs, and important for patients. In recent years, 40 to 60% of new drugs launched in the US first. So that's great, right? Here's the thing, it wasn't always that way. It's not destiny.
In the 1970s, when I was on the Senate Judiciary Committee, the world had changed. To our shock, we found out not a single drug had been commercialized from all the billions of dollars going into NIH funding. And it wasn't because they're doing bad research. It was because there was no incentives and no ability for the private sector to turn these research ideas into new products. So the upshot was a thing called the Bayh-Dole Act. And what it did was it actually decentralized management to the universities, small companies, and federal laboratories making inventions. That led to the greatest renaissance in history. But here's the bottom line. Do you want research papers or do you want cures?
Developing a medicine is not an easy process. On average, it takes 10 to 15 years and $2.6 billion to develop just one medicine when you consider all the failures. And most don't succeed. Only 12% of the medicines entering clinical trials ever reach FDA approval and access for patients. So IP protections, including patents, provide that certainty that enables companies to take these risks.
Another key component to the IP ecosystem that many people are not really familiar with is data exclusivity. And this is protection for the clinical and test data that is generated by the biopharmaceutical companies in order to get on the market. And in addition, we also have a very strong system for protecting trade secrets. These may be the technical know-how, the processes, process patents, you're able to get them, but they're a little more difficult to enforce. So if you can keep them trade secrets, you can then, is another complement in your whole arsenal of IP protection. And I think that really captures why the US is a leader.
I mentioned I'm a professor at Emory University. I had friends and associates who were dying of HIV, and I'm not an economic genius, but I thought, what if we could find some drugs that kept people alive? And they'd have to take those drugs every day. That would tremendously expand the market and make a huge difference, a huge impact on the health of the public. I learned intellectual property and also business development and regulatory affairs were all intertwined with the science, and you just couldn't do one without taking into account all the other pieces of the puzzle that allows the people who are taking the biggest risk to continue to develop new life-saving drugs.